is the part that I really love to be able to do, is to help parents and help you think through all the different pieces that are going to be the most helpful for you and for your child. So to start off, let me get my PowerPoint going. I think it's important that we all take a moment of just serenity, to take a deep breath, right? Getting onto Zoom or to Ring Central is always a little bit, stressful. Does it work? Is my video working? Is my audio working? Is my PowerPoint going to work? Technology is amazing until it isn't. And just to know that this is a place that we'll be able to hopefully really support each other and be able to think through the type of intentional parenting that I know we really all want to be able to do, to be thoughtful in how we're approaching our children this time, during this time, and not just being reactive to whatever comes our way, right? The days are long. We're all together in very small quarters without any interaction around us. So I love this picture because it just brings such peace to my mind, and I hope that you're able to find that at different points, and we'll talk a lot about that during this time. So to begin, we're gonna, like I mentioned, have an opportunity to hopefully learn some skills, and then at the end, we'll do a question and answer period. So I'm gonna be presenting 5 strategies for both parents and for kids. So how can you be better at being you, and then how can you be better in relationship to your children? And my hope is really that you're going to learn some very specific, concrete strategies that you can take home with you tonight, wake up tomorrow, and start to use some of them all together. So these hopefully will be not just for young kids, but for old kids, and really the mix and the age range of what hopefully is represented by the people on the webinar tonight. So I kept thinking about, how to help parents and how to help kids. And I kept coming back to when you're on a plane, not that any of us are flying anywhere these days, but when you're on a plane and they have that demonstration, and it's always that statement of make sure you put your own mask on before you help your child next to you, which I'm like, that probably will not happen with most people or most parents. But the concept is true. You have to be able to take care of yourself, and you have to be able to make sure you are recharged and you are taken care of before you're going to be able to be a good parent to your children. So we're going to start with the 5 strategies for you before we get to your children, because I really do think that that is the foundation of how you're going to be able to survive this storm, is to really think about how can you take care of yourself so that you can then help your children and support them as well. So 5 strategies. Number 1, do a daily self-check-in. Wake up in the morning. If you know that your children wake up a certain amount of time, wake up a few minutes earlier, wake up 5 minutes earlier. I know in the morning, that's when I have the chance to sort of exercise a little bit, wake up, be thinking about some things, but you could do it at the end of the night also. But find some time during the day and take 5 minutes to think about what are you going to accomplish today or tomorrow, depending on when you do that self-check-in, to sort of see and evaluate what do you need to be able to go forward and to be successful with what you have to do today. Right? One of our main goals is to stay sane. We're all trying to stay sane right now, and be thoughtful about what that list includes. What do you want to work on? What do you want to make sure you're able to accomplish? And for some people, that could be just as much as like getting that stupid pile of laundry folded on the couch, or getting someone else to put their stupid pile of laundry away. But again, really take the time for you to focus on what you need for yourself. And it doesn't have to be a chore thing, right? It could be sort of whatever you need for yourself. Do you need some time to make sure you check in with others? Do you need some time to make sure you get some exercise in? Do you need to make sure that you spend a little bit more time with, your second child because you spent a lot of time with your first child? really take time to do that self-evaluation, because it'll give you a nice reference and a nice frame on what you want to do during that day. For some type A personalities, that might be actually making a list, right, and checking it off. But for others, it could just be sort of a mental calculation and a mental sort of understanding of what do I need to get to do? What do I need for me today? So for some people, it might even be thinking about, how am I going to thoughtfully use my phone today? We'll talk a little bit more about phone use in a bit, right? But being thoughtful about those different pieces that you said, you know what, I wasn't really good with my patients yesterday. I'm going to try to do that a little bit more today. Or maybe I wasn't as great as giving enough fruits or vegetables for snacks today. I'm going to be a little bit more thoughtful about doing that. So this really helps us become more thoughtful parents when we're able to check in, think about what happened yesterday, and how we can continue to strive forward and be better. Part of that self-check-in also always should be a reminder of what we're grateful for. Yes, these are hard times, and a lot of us are going through extremely, extremely difficult pieces, whether it's with jobs or with occupations or with family members who might be getting sick. But be thoughtful and do this with your children also. What are you grateful for today? What are you so thankful for that you were able to appreciate? And that will also help think of how to focus on some of the positive things that we have. I saw a great meme that said, this was the first time in history that we can save humanity by just sitting on the couch and watching Netflix. So on one hand, it's like, oh, that's all we have to do to save humanity, pretty simple. On the other hand, it's not that simple. It's not that easy. But what are we grateful for? What can we be thankful for? What can we count our blessings towards? Because that really will help you approach it in as much of a positive lens that you can. And again, being able to have those conversations with your children about what are they grateful for? What are they so thankful for? And to think about all those different pieces and how that radiates throughout your day. Number 2, tip for you parents out there, you really want to find your supports. Who's your tribe? Who are your people? Who do you need to help you get through this right now? Yes, your children are very important, but who are those other people that when you are really at the bottom and when you are really not in a good space, who can be that person, or who can be those people that you call to really lean on for support? Even though we can't physically be with our people in our tribe, it doesn't mean that we still can't get support from them. So that can be people who have always been there for you on a regular basis, right? Those people that you usually call every day, or the people that you usually make your carpool phone calls to. But it can also be people who you haven't spoken to in a long time because maybe you just haven't had the chance to. I've actually reached out to quite a number of friends from college and friends from high school from when I grew up, just to say, you know what, I haven't talked to you in a long time and been thinking about you. So that's a great time to also reconnect in a meaningful way, because sometimes we just might have a little bit more time on our hands these days. But think about who those people are for you and who do you need to help support you. This is something that you should be thinking about every day again. Who are your people? Who are your supports out there? Because those are the people who are going to help you get through all this as we go through. Next, thank goodness we live in Florida. Get outside every day. I feel really bad for some of my friends in the Northeast where it's been snowy, or in Chicago where it's been cold and just miserable and rainy. We have the opportunity to get outside, get some fresh air, and every day with my 3 children, I actually eat lunch. We have one palm tree that gives us some shade at 12 noon. So we take our lawn chairs, we sit outside on our lawn, and we eat lunch outside. And then besides that, in between classes or in between what I'm doing during the day, I'll make sure I get outside and just take a walk 5 minutes of sunshine and real natural light makes a really big difference in terms of your attitude, in terms of your approach. It's also a really nice reset. Hopefully you're also working with your kids to get outside. They should also be getting outside every day, but make sure that when you do take that time outside, that you're taking it for yourself as well, not just for your kids. And then, of course, taking time for yourself. Sometimes as parents, it feels like the only time we have for ourselves, although sometimes it doesn't even count because they're knocking on the doors when you're in the bathroom. But again, think about where that time is for you. Is it, again, at the beginning of the day? Is it at the end of the day? Is it during the middle of the day when you know everyone's napping or everyone's sleeping or having lunch, and you can really take that time that you need. Take some, and you can do whatever you want, right? Maybe it's Netflix for you. Maybe it's taking some time to exercise. Maybe it's, again, calling those people that you want to be able to call and connect with. But take time for yourself and really think of it that way. That's an important piece, because there's so many times I know, when I'm sure we've all been there, where you have 5 minutes, you just sit on the couch, you start like thumbing through Instagram or thumbing through Facebook or some social media, and like a half hour is gone. And if you wanted to do that and that was a good break for you, awesome. But sometimes I'm like, seriously, I just spent a half hour on Facebook. Oh my God. I would have loved to have X, Y, or Z, done something else with that time. So when you do take that time for yourself, do it intentionally. Be very thoughtful that I'm going to take these next 10 minutes to, if you want it to be on your phone on social media, great. If you don't, find that thing you want it to be and make sure that you do it. But again, carve it out and be thoughtful that this is the time that you are actually taking for yourself. And then the fifth point that I have for parents is to know what your limits are, right? Sometimes at the beginning of these kinds of sort of crises or really tough situations, we go into like super mom mode or superhero mode or super dad mode. And, it's just like, we can do this, I can do this, I can get this all done, and I can, really churn it out. But sometimes that adrenaline only lasts for so long. So be really thoughtful about what are your limits. If you know you cannot clean one more dish, you cannot prepare one more snack, if you cannot, whatever, fill in the blank, be aware of what those limits are beforehand, before you get to sort of that explosion mode. Because then you'll be able to ask again, going back to some of the previous slides, asking for help, being thoughtful about what you know you can accomplish today and what's going to be over the line for you, reaching out to those people that you need for help, to be able to make sure that you don't really go over the cliff, because that's not going to be helpful again for your children. You want to be able to be in a good place foundational, and these 5 tips will help you do that so that you can then be there for your children. Okay, so those are my 5 tips for you, but what about the kids? Okay, I want to talk a little bit about how we can be intentional in what we're doing with our children, intentional about our parenting, and make sure that we are giving them and being thoughtful about how we're supporting them during this time. One thing I always share with parents is the concept of time in. And parents often don't think about time in. They ask me a lot about time out, right? Well, time out doesn't work. How should I put them in time out? What should time out look like? But I'm not going to talk about time out here, because the most important thing you can do is time in. And time in really means spending intentional time with your child, right? For people who do use timeout or choose to use timeout, the only way timeout ever really works is if you have really good time in, right? And time in should actually be like 98% of the day. If there is time out being used, that's such a small amount. But whether you have a 2-year-old, whether you have a 16-year-old, time in is the most important piece. So I want to define time in for you. Time in is spending time with your child in an intentional way that focuses on his or her interests and following his or her lead. Okay? So for 10 minutes a day, imagine doing 10 minutes a day where you're sitting with your child. And I'll talk about what it looks like maybe for different ages, right? Your 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old. That's sort of looking like you're sitting on the ground, playing with trains, playing with whatever he or she wants to play with, and really following his or her lead. Okay? So you're not asking a lot of questions. You're not saying, ooh, what color is this? Wow, how many tracks are there? Oh my gosh, how many, what does the bird say? What does the sheep say? Right? That's a lot of you and focusing on you. But focus that time on your child. Follow and imitate what he or she is doing, right? Tell them, wow, you're jumping that plane really high. Tell them that you notice what they're doing and just be in their world. So that's what time out looks like. That's what time in looks like for the younger subset of kids, right? For children who are sort of that elementary school age, it's again, spending time with them, doing something that they enjoy. It may not be building train tracks anymore. It might be more, maybe sitting and even just sometimes reading on the couch together, right? Maybe it's watching a silly show together. Maybe it's doing a puzzle together. It doesn't have to be that it could be playing a game together, right? But doing it in an intentional way where you again are sort of letting them choose what they want to do. Maybe it's going outside and playing basketball. Maybe it's going outside and taking a run around the block together. But doing something that they get to choose and that you are just doing it with them. And then for the sort of older set, the older crop of children, that really looks like being there, right? Time in for older kids should not involve many questions. And sometimes it feels really awkward to do that, right? To just sort of sit on the couch and just say, hey, I'm so glad you're here today. Like, I'm so glad I get to check in with you. And then you just wait. Sometimes it can feel awkward, but asking questions is not really helping them tell you what's on their mind, right? And that's really the goal. The goal is that you get to understand what's on their mind. But if you're asking questions all the time, you're taking them off their own track, right? If I say, how was your day? What'd you do in school? What'd you learn? What teachers did you have? Those are my questions. That's information that I want to know, but that may not be information that my children want to share with me, right? So I always, for that older set, like 10, 11 and up, I always encourage parents to just sort of be there and then just wait for the conversation to start. It takes a little bit of practice because it feels a little bit awkward, but it really shows that you're there to just be and you're there to just chill with them and to be in their presence. And for older kids, that's what time in is. It's just hanging out and not being interrogated. Because sometimes when parents are with children, that's sort of what we do is we interrogate. We want information, right? So you shouldn't see it as much as trying to get information from your children as trying to connect with them and trying to understand what's on their mind. So that's time in. And I really would encourage you to try to spend at least 10 minutes with each of your children one-on-one in that time in sort of bubble where the child gets to take the lead. You're just there listening. You're there sort of observing and interacting based on where they are. It's really important that during time in, you put down your phone because you want them to know that your phone is not going to be there, that you're focusing on them. So that's a really good segue to a little bit of cell phone use, right? It is so easy when we're at home to just pick up that phone and be on it all the time, right? To check the news, to check the text, I just got a ding, I just got an email. Now, if you're working at home, that's a totally and completely different story. And you can let your children know that, just to let you know, I'm responding to a work text right now, or I'm responding to a work email right now. That's very different. But are you sort of scrolling Instagram? Are you scrolling Facebook? Are you responding to every single text right away? If there's an emergency, of course. But I would encourage you to be very thoughtful about how you're using your phone during these times, because, or especially if you have children who have phones, right? You want to be modeling the kind of phone usage that you want them to be doing, right? If you're having a conversation with your child and their phone dings, you don't want them to just pick it up and respond and stop their conversation with you, right? But the question is, how often are we doing that to our children? So like I said, be really thoughtful about how you're using your phone in front of your children. And again, I always try to think of it when my child is 18 or 17 or 16, if I'm having a conversation with them at the table and their phone rings and they pick it up and look at it, that's not what I want them to do. I want them to talk to me. So be thoughtful about how you're modeling that behavior, so that one day they will be able to say, you know what, my mom and dad, when we were talking, that's what they were focused on. And sure, they looked at things if they needed to, but for the most part, they were focusing on us and not on their phones. And it's hard. This is probably the hardest one, and it's hard for me also, because our phones are just so addictive. They're dinging, they're buzzing, they're made to grab our attention away from what we were doing. So again, going back to that, being thoughtful and sort of taking that time to be where you want to be, and be the kind of, put the kind of intention where you want it to be. Number 2, what are your kids hearing? There's a lot of scary information out there. And whether they're hearing it from the news that you have on in the background, or from conversations that you're having with family, or conversations that you're having with friends, just make sure what they're hearing is what you want them to know. For young kids, maybe the news, leaving the news on in the background may not be the best choice. There's a lot of information about people dying right now. And so be really thoughtful about what kind of secondary information they might be getting that you may not even be, intending for them to get. Right? There's going to be a lot of talk amongst friends. Oh, did you hear about this person who has it? Did you hear about that person who has it? Right? And I was talking with my children about it, and my 8-year-old said to me, well, if you get it, you die. And then we talked about, what does it mean that, a 3%, right? That if you have 100 M&Ms, out of those 100 M&Ms, 3 of them are not going to be there anymore. And that put it in perspective for him, and he said, so all those other M&Ms are going to be okay. I said, yes, all those other M&Ms are going to be okay. So being, again, thoughtful about how you're presenting this information to your children and how you want them to hear it. Do you want them to be hearing it from you, or from the news, or from different people that they may be in contact with? So just remember that even if you're talking in the other room, the kids are listening. So be thoughtful about keeping those private conversations really private. There's a lot of really great information out there, whether it's YouTube or a lot of free services right now that can help you figure out how you want to share it with your children. So we have some resources at PPA that if anyone's interested, you can always be in touch with us and we can share that. But I was just going through a few different YouTube videos about it, and there's some really good resources out there for children that are age appropriate for different developmental ages. So that might be helpful for them also, because it's hard to wrap our heads around the fact that this is going to be their new normal, but what does that mean for them? How are they going to process that? And be thoughtful about where they're getting that information from. So for some people, schedule, schedule, schedule equals sanity, sanity, sanity. This schedule may be a little bit too intense for some people, but for others, this may be exactly what you need to get through your day. So whether you decide to do an hour by hour schedule or just some broader categories, our children, we know for the most part, do much better with structure, right? It doesn't have to be militant structure, but some sort of structure to get them through their day. It helps me to have some sort of structure to get me through my day, right? And so for some kids, that's making sure that they're changing out of their pajamas. They're not in their pajamas all day long, even just for the sake of changing clothes and getting some fresh perspective, right? I would say there's probably a few things that's really important to make sure that your children are doing throughout the day. Some outdoor time, some activity time, snack time, right? So what you don't want to do is just have a ginormous day of eating where you're just eating from when you wake up to when we go to bed. It's not healthy for children. It's not healthy for us as adults. So having some sort of structure of here's where we're doing this now. It's snack time, and then we're not going to have anything to eat until lunch. Or this is a great time to do some chores and teach children how to do chores, especially for people who may have had some help in the house, no longer have that help. Great time to do chores. I just taught my children how to clean toilets and mop the floors. So that can be a great, time that or emptying the dishwasher. Even young kids can do some chores, right? 2 or 3-year-olds can go through and sort underwear and socks from the laundry. They can clean up their own plates after lunchtime or after a mealtime. They can throw away their own food. There's a lot of stuff that each developmental age can do to make sure that they're taking care of themselves and also contributing to part of the family. Having some quiet time, totally appropriate, right? Where you do not have to entertain your children all day long. So figuring out what that quiet time is going to mean for each of your children, whether that's reading, if you don't have any independent readers yet, right? That can be setting up a few different toy areas, and they can choose between 2 or 3 activities, so that you are not always sitting down and playing with them all the time. And then, of course, dinner time, bedtime, bath time, reading, right? Bedtime is an important piece to make sure that is on schedule, and whatever schedule that is, right? It might mean that children are going bed a little bit later because they're waking up a little bit later in the morning. That's fine. But again, be thoughtful of what are the things that you want your children to be able to sort of rotate throughout the day. So it's not just sort of like one long unstructured day. So patience on everybody's part is going to be important to practice and important to be thoughtful about, right? We know that our kids are going to be a little bit more irritable, right? We know that they're going to be a little bit more reactive. We know that they're going to be a little bit more impatient, and so are we. But being able to know that and to acknowledge those pieces is going to be really helpful for us to be able to understand it, to see it, and then to also in ourselves take a deep breath and bring that conversation tone down, right? So if there's a lot of screaming or yelling or kids are really upset, if you meet them at that high level, they're going to respond at an even higher level. So if there's a lot of emotion and big emotions being talked about at the time, if you can bring the tone down, they're more likely to match you down here and not continue to bring it up. So making sure that you are modeling patience for them, right? Physically taking a deep breath and then talking in a calm voice, again, will not only model it, but will also help bring that tone down. And again, it's hard. We're all sort of on edge and on eggshells right now. But again, this is where I always say that behavior change is really humbling. We expect our little one to do a lot. We expect them to listen. We expect them to stop hitting. We expect them to be patient. We expect all these things. And when we have to do it in ourselves, we really realize how hard it is to change behavior. And we have a fully formed frontal lobe, right? We're asking our children to change their behavior, and their frontal lobe isn't even fully formed yet. So when I think about this idea of patience, it's really important that we can model it. Take a deep breath, no matter how we're feeling inside. I always say that parenting is about 85% act, right? Because you might be really upset inside or really frustrated or really angry, but trying to teach them to take a breath and approach a situation so that you can solve the problems that are coming up is going to be a really powerful lesson. And my fifth point for your children is to make sure you're giving them a sense of safety. Again, when you're listening to the news, it can sound like everybody in the world is dying right now. And make sure that you are there to explain what's going on in a real way. You know your child the best. You know what he or she is thinking or feeling most of the time. So how can you be there to support them and really let them know that, we're in this together. We're going to do the best that we can. And I'm going to do the best as your parent to make sure you stay safe, right? And making sure that they are getting that sense of safety from you from a regular basis. That means usually lots of hugs, lots of kisses, and a lot of just being there, a lot of that time in being there for your children. And not just physically, but in and thoughtful way, letting them know that we're in this together and we'll get through this together. So, as a recap, as we sort of finish up, the 5 pieces for parents: do your daily self-check-in, find your supports, get your tribe together, try to get outside every day, get some fresh air, sunshine, and vitamin D. Take time out for yourself, whether that's the beginning, that's at the end, and make it be a thoughtful, structured time that you are really valuing that time that you're taking by yourself. And then know your limits. Know when you need to tag out. Know when you need to call in the support because you may have reached that limit. For your kids, make sure you focus on time in. Give them that one individual time that they with you on their terms, not yours. Remember, limit questions so you're not just interrogating them during that time. 2, what are your kids hearing? Be thoughtful about what they're getting from the people around. Number 3, schedule for a lot of people equal sanity. Make sure your children are getting a variety of different activities to keep their day going. 4, patience. Patience, it's a muscle that we have to keep working out and practicing if we're going to get it to be nice and big and robust. And 5, giving your children and making sure they have a sense of safety and reminding them that we're in this together and we'll get this together. And just as some perspective, I saw this somewhere, and I really liked this. You're not stuck at home, you're safe at home. And I think that really has helped me gain some perspective about how to speak about it, right? And speak about it with our children, speak about it with my children at least, to talk about how it's not just that we're stuck here and we're stuck at home, we're actually doing this to keep ourselves safe and to keep our family safe. So if you can take sort of that negative spin and make it a little bit more positive, I think overall it'll be beneficial to you and to your children, because again, foundationally, you have to make sure you take care of you so that you can take care of your kids.